Three, two, one. Happy Friday, coasters. It's Malzilla here again with another episode of the Sonic Coast to Coast, Sonic Coast to Coast podcast. The title's so catchy, it just kind of blurs together. So I have to, think about it when I say it.
The
But with
Sonic
me,
Coast that hosts the coast the most. There you go.
the SHC2C.
Yeah.
Well,
B2B.
with
Ass to ass.
B2B,
Sorry.
but never go ass to mouth. Did I?
Yeah, please don't.
Well, with me as always is my good pal Radrey. Radrey, how you doing?
I do good. And I'm doing well.
Are you ready to wrap up season 1 of SatAM?
Hell yeah. I mean, I don't know. I really love this show. And and every time I watch it, it always gets better. I
It
enjoyed
warms
the experience.
cockles of
Despite
your heart.
what?
I said it warms the cockles of your heart.
Oh yeah. Well, there's no more cockles after season 1, I think. Now there is no more heart in season 2. But we'll get into that when we get into that. But let me just interject here a little bit that I mean, personally, I did not like these next 2 episodes, but it does not change my opinion on SatAM. It's still relatively the same. Maybe you could even say it strengthens my love for the show, even though I found a lot of holes this time in this viewing. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, our next final 2 episodes here is, we'll start off here with Subsonic, directed by Dick Sebast. He seems to do all the episodes in the first season. So, I don't see many people talk about him, or at least I haven't seen like the fan community like having a kind of a open conversation with him. I know in the next season, I believe it's his name's escaping me now. Jake, Groovy Jake on Twitter, or maybe he moved to Blue Sky. I'm not sure. Blue Sky's nice. I just want to interject a little bit. It reminds me of Twitter, the early, what was it? When did Twitter come out? 2010? It reminds me of 2010 Twitter. But
I think it was like 2009 or something.
okay. Yeah, back then when people just used Twitter to like write random things. Like I went
Funny.
outside to get milk, and that was it.
The first time I saw Twitter be a thing, I was in college, and me and my buddy were watching the NFL draft because all the draft analysts were like talking about Twitter and tweeting about who got picked, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Now you find people on Twitter or whatsoever, or X, or whatever you want to call it. The child of 4chan now. Anyway, I'm digressing. But yes, Groovy Jake talks to a lot of the SatAM people, but we'll get into that probably a little later. So stay tuned, or stay. I don't know. I guess you're not tuned. Why do we still say that? It's like something carried on from the 90s because you don't tune your TV anymore. I'm prolonging the analysis. Excuse me. Anyway, directed by Dick Sebast, written by Barbara Slade, the writer-creator of the 2014 show Hi Opie. It's like a live-action preschool series. She only wrote 1 episode, but she was the creator. She also wrote for Rugrats, a show named Angelina Ballerina, and an Australian TV movie like for teens named Dead Gorgeous. IMDb gives this a 6.2. So, let's begin. The episode opens with a snake probe emerging from Dr. Robotnik's drilling platform and digging into an underground oil lake. Robotnik demands more oil from Snively, who reports that only 36% has been extracted. Meanwhile, the probe disrupts a cave, awakening. The internet seems to call this character the Kraken. I don't know if he was named. On my
I don't think he was.
on the rewatch, I kept going back through it. I'm like, was he named? Because the internet, or at least the Sonic wikis, keep calling him Kraken, and I'm like, is he? Is this what a Kraken looks like?
The not Lorax.
Yeah, the Purple Lorax, who's voiced by who I think is either Jim Cummings or Dan Castellaneta. I'm noticing Dan Castellaneta's voice here and there. I don't know if you ever watched Earthworm Jim back in the day, but he had like a certain set of voices. And I'm like, this sounds like an Earthworm Jim character. Or like, he also did like a lot of the voices on the Aladdin series, if you remember.
Yep, yep, yep.
I think that's him. I could be mistaken, but I don't know. People out there who are listening, let me know. Uh, Meanwhile, yeah. Oh wait, I read that already. The destruction causes toxic green water to spill into the Great River after this probe destroys the Kraken's home as he's seated on his throne in the middle of the cave. So anyway, back at Knothole, the freedom fighters struggle to plant trees as they all die despite proper care. Sally suspects that pollution from Robotropolis is probably spreading, affecting the land. As dark clouds gather, Sally hopes that rain will revive the trees. In another location, Sonic is playing his guitar and singing some song something that must have prompted them to make Sonic Underground while fishing on a bridge over the Great River. He catches a fish, it pulls him into the river, and though he struggles, it escapes, leaving Sonic covered in green water. Back with his friends, as Sonic recounts his adventure, green water drips from Sonic's ear onto a flower to make it miraculously grow. Sonic then knocks out more green water from his other ear, making a sapling grow into a full tree. Sally realizes that the green water is the key to saving the forest. Sonic, Sally, Antoine, and Rotor then set off on a boat down the Great River to find more of this green water. Rotor then confesses that he'd like to be a superhero like Sonic, but Sonic reassures him that he already is a great mechanic. I want to interject here again. This is my interjections. Do you like having this where we get one episode about one character where they have an arc?
Yeah,
Or does
I'm
it take
both
you out of it?
for. I'm neutral on it. I don't think it necessarily takes me out of it because I do feel like we do need to get to know these characters. I mean, Sonic and Sally get so much time compared to the others, so
Yes,
it's
yes.
nice. But I'm gonna tip my hand a little bit and say most of the episodes not revolved around Sonic and Sally are kind of ass in some aspects. I
Okay.
mean, they're
You
not
mean this
bad,
episode in
but
particular?
let's just say I'm not too kind. Not too fun. It didn't go the way I thought remembered it. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind this sort of thing. I like seeing more screen time given to Rotor. Because I know like they
I
go
just wish it was a better episode because I like Rotor.
well, because I know that like they go a little bit more in depth with his character, like in the Archie book. Or at least I know Ian wrote a little bit about like his backstory. Is that true?
Ian did a little bit, but that was mostly Pender's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but
Ian,
at that
Ian's
point I
kind of
gave up on reading. But yeah,
Yeah, Ian talked about. Now, this is kind of a little bit of an Archie aside, an Archie antidote, if you will.
that's why we're here.
um, Back in the day, I'm sure all of our fans have heard of Ian's Lost Hedgehog's Tales, kind of his plans for what was going to be had certain reboots not be forced upon us by just
The
life.
powers that be.
Uh, by the powers of the legal the legal happenings of things going on. But one of the things that he talked about how Rotor was such a hard character to write because
Wait, who
there
said that?
wrote Ian.
Oh, okay.
Like he had one episode. It was kind of like It was like it was a Word document. It was kind of like the prologue to the Lost Hedgehog Tales. Kind of basically his thoughts and reasonings for basically all he wrote up to kind of the Mecha Sally and kind of up to what was going to be, what ended up being the reboot Super Genesis wave. But one of the things he talked about like he did talk about, they thought about legitimately killing off Antoine, but there's enough fans say, no, don't kill Antoine. But he also talked about how Rotor was such a hard character to write for because no one really knew what to do with him at that point. Because again, he's introduced as kind of the mechanic, but as they had kind of gotten more in line with the games, that became more Tails, gig because that's kind of what he was. Once they kind of gave Tails a personality, you know, or I shouldn't say personality, kind of when he became more active, when he graduated beyond just being the kid character. But they tried to do different things with Rotor. They tried making him a politician. Supposedly he got like super injured, and then he got some kind of Iron Man suit. So Rotor was kind of a hard character for them to, do because there was, he kind of got replaced, at least in the annals of the Archie continuity, by Tails, even though it was technically Tails' spot to begin with. So
Well,
yeah.
if I remember correctly, I remember listening to one Bumblecast episode where he was talking about how Rotor's actually like an immigrant, or he was written as an immigrant. I don't know if that was a Pender's thing or if that was like or that.
Well, not necessarily because like there were flashbacks of like because in the original preboot continuity, Rotor's father named Sherman was he drove kind of a tank vehicle in the war with the Overlanders. He was on the mission where Jules got injured and was forced to be roboticized to save his life. So the Walrus family was there, but they also lived at the North Pole. Ian kind of tweaked that a little bit when they did the reboot, where
Oh, so it
you
is a
find out
Pender's
that
thing.
yeah,
Okay.
but then in the reboot where all those things, they tossed out that version of Rotor's dad and they came up with Tundra. So Tundra was the egg boss of like the Arctic egg battalion working for Eggman, and Rotor had, because he and his dad didn't quite get along. Rotor left home at an early age and found Robotropolis and joined the Freedom Fighter kids. So technically, yes, he is a bit of an immigrant. He's not exactly, well, technically, really, only if you think about it, because technically Bunny, at least in the Archie continuity, Bunny came from the Southern Baronies, even though she was seen as a kid
Wait,
in
wait. Did you just say
SatAM.
Brony? Oh,
Baronies.
Baroni. Okay. There's a
That
difference.
was the kind of the Sonic analog of the South, the Southern Baronies.
Okay. All right.
And
I imagine
when
this
we
was
get
written before Bronies became a thing.
maybe, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. You get to hear the whole backstory of Rotor that was not discussed in this episode. It would have been nice to have some little backstory, but of course the show didn't last that long, so we never got it. But we did get it in the Archie series. But that's a conversation for another day. Unless you have more to say, Malzil, on this
Um,
on Rotor.
Not at the moment.
Okay, yeah, like you were saying that Ian said that Rotor was a hard character to write, and we can get more into that in another episode. Let's continue. So after some unexpected hiccups of adventure through waterfalls on their boat, Sonic rows while Rotor works on the boat's motor, and soon a large mechanical fragment heads towards them, and Sonic and Rotor try to push away. But after pushing the fragment away, they then realize Antoine is gone. The trio continues their journey, navigating polluted, colorful water. Sally and Rotor work to prevent the boat from sinking, while Sonic continues paddling. They're caught in a current, and then they head towards a waterfall again. And Sonic jumps from the boat, pushing it against the screen and running it up the waterfall on the side of the branch. And then after the rescue, Sally kisses Sonic on the cheek in gratitude. I don't know if I want to talk about it here or at the end. I want to talk about all this kissing Sally does, like in the show. Like just like a peck on the cheek. This is just a peck on the cheek for like this one. And then she does a little later to Rotor. And then I think, well, not in this one. Does she do it for Antoine in this one? I can't remember. No, it's not
Can't
this
quite
one.
remember.
What?
I I don't think so.
No, I think it was just Rotor and Sonic in this one. And maybe the
Probably.
monster. The Kraken. No, I don't think she kisses the Kraken. She doesn't peck him on the cheek. Um, but I want to get into this maybe either end or now, depending on how you want to talk about this. What's your feeling on this? Do you have any strong opinions on this?
Um, it's all pretty innocent and innocuous. I really don't think it's much to just Sally's affectionate, but yeah.
All right, well we'll get
Sid,
into it at the end of
Sid-
the episode because I got something to say. Uh,
okay.
Anyway, however, the water turns pink and boils, breaking the boat apart, and then Sonic grabs vines from the cave ceiling, and Rotor and Sally join him. Together, they cross the lake via the vines. In a cave with then beautiful vegetation, they call for Antoine, but Rotor senses that they're being watched. When Sally approaches a yellow flower, it tries to bite her like a la Little Shop Befores, like one of those big Venus flytraps. Sonic spins into action, tying up the flowers with their stems. But after defeating them, Rotor notices that Sally has disappeared. She was eaten. It's the Vor episode. No, it's not. That's a joke. They then search, but then find her missing. But then they continued to the underground throne room that was shown in the beginning of the episode, where Rotor says he smells Robotropolis. Now, I want to ask you, what does Robotropolis smell like, if you had to guess? Like
I don't want to imagine.
old
Probably
rust? I mean,
um
how many years has it been
oil.
since the takeover? Yeah, maybe oil. Yeah. Bad
It's been
gasoline?
about 10 years.
Huh. Like, why would it still? I guess I understand if like these machines are like old or they're new or something, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what this smell is because they say this a lot in the show, where it smells. I imagine they're just doing that to like give people an understanding that it's like a negative experience. That's all I can gather from this. But
Makes sense
I
to
do
me.
find this tidbit interesting. All right. So as they approach the throne, Sonic hears something and investigates. A mysterious shadow appears behind them. When Sonic screams, Rotor goes to investigate and finds Sonic caught by the Kraken. Sonic tells Rotor to run, but then Rotor stumbles and falls into a hole as the Kraken tries to grab him. So I keep calling him the Kraken. Again, to reiterate, I keep calling him the Kraken because that's what the wiki calls him. What are your thoughts on this Kraken, Malzilla?
Um, again, he's very tropey. He's kind of the Lorax. He says, "I speak for the trees," or the underground,
Was
and
there
blah
a
blah
bunch
blah.
of Lorax back in the day? I don't remember the Lorax lore.
I don't know. I'm just kind of bullshitting a little bit. Um, this is a very if our listeners, the coasters, haven't picked up, this is a very environmental episode.
Oh, yes.
Probably a little bit more than previous. Sonic's always had the environmental, theme going through, but this one's a little bit more on the heavy-handed side. So this is, when I say he's the Lorax, he's kind of the, saying, Robotnik's, fracking, oil, industrial, you know, strip mining, yada yada, is bad. And, kind of, as we're going to see in about, a couple scenes, the reason we're going to, see the reason why all the plants are dying is because things got kind of jammed up. So there's a little bit of a dam.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I really have to say about this character, like you said, he's very tropey. Um, I was surprised that they actually made him speak. I thought he was just going to be like a mindless beast who's just underground that eats things. But I guess I guess if we want to empathize with him, we have to make him speak or something, right? Um, Anyway, so yeah, the Kraken then demands to know what Sonic has done to his underground world. Sonic denies knowing anything. Meanwhile, in another scene, Rotor falls to an underground river with green water. He recognizes this, and he realizes that this is what's causing the cave's overgrowth. I always love maybe I'm kind of a sucker for this episode because I always love these like underground episodes where there's like tons of vegetation. Like I don't know if you've ever played like the original Tomb Raider where
Oh, yeah.
you go underground and then like there's a dinosaur. I just thought that was the
Oh, yeah.
coolest thing ever. Like you get to shoot down a dinosaur underground. I don't know what it is about like for me like going to this is like such an adventure, you know. I mean, maybe this is why I love this show. It's like I really
Very
feel like
journey to the center of the earth type
yeah, like Journey to the
stuff.
Center of the Earth. Yeah, I guess that's what makes it fun. I guess that's part of what I guess why I still remember the show. I remember the adventure elements of it, and I remember enjoying it. So, yeah. He clears the stones blocking the river along the green water to flow again, and he takes a sample with his canteen. As the water flows, trees in the Great Forest come back to life. Meanwhile, Sonic, Sally, and Antoine are trapped in some, I guess, contaminated water. And Antoine blames Sonic for their predicament, but Sonic can't free himself either. I don't know why Antoine's blaming him. He just, I don't know. he's got a hard up for Sonic. He just doesn't like him, you know.
I mean, it's he's jealous of Sonic. I mean, we've all kind
Yeah,
of
I guess
established
they
that
really want
several
to
episodes.
they want to drill this into our minds. They want us to let us know that he is not forgiving him anytime soon. I mean, this is probably what they should have done with Hooked on Sonics a bit more, where Antoine really becomes the villain or something. Unless there's an episode of that in Archie or something. But anyway,
Excuse me. Kind of not, but not really. Really, Antoine kind of becomes less of an antagonistic to Sonic. Really, once he they kind of move him from Sally to Bunny. There's a scene when Antoine tries to when they do the initial post Mecha Madness trial where they try Sonic as a traitor, and Antoine's the prosecution. But really after that, the two of them are pretty chummy after that. But for the most part, again, once Antoine moves on from Sally to Bunny, things between the two of them kind of balance out.
yeah,
But then, of course,
yeah.
Sonic has to deal with Jeffrey then. So it's kind of like, oh, I have to go from one accented idiot to another accented idiot.
What was he's British or something? I forgot what it was. He's like
Yeah, it's
James
kind of
Bond
one of those
inspired,
things.
right?
Yeah, there's actually, I think people thought originally he was supposed to be Aussie because he said mate a lot, like "g'day mate." But then
Mm-hmm.
they kind of switched it back to British to kind of, because he was again that secret agent type thing.
Okay. I'm guessing by the tone of your voice, you would not like to see a evil Antoine episode.
Well, technically, we did in the comics. We got a whole evil Antoine arc, but that was Patch, not
Yeah, I
Antoine.
don't know if that counts, but maybe it does. I don't know. What do you think? Does that count?
I mean, I think there was plans to actually have it be Antoine, but then things got shuffled along. That's a discussion for another day, though.
Okay. I guess I don't know. I don't open up a Sonic book with these characters and expect, man, I can't wait for the evil Antoine episode or the evil Antoine arc. I don't really say that. So I do find it interesting whenever he because he's really a buffoon and a fool, and I do find it interesting
Fuel. Fuel.
when he actually tries to like do something and he succeeds. I find this kind of entertaining, but I understand. I also do get why people see him as the Jar Jar of the series. So let's move on. I love interrupting. If this like ruins your flow or if it annoys you that I'm making all these pauses, please let me know. So, Antoine gets scared when a mutant crocodile then appears, and then the water level rises. Rotor on the other side reaches another underground lake. detects oil in the water and then sees a snake probe emerge. It fires a laser at Rotor, but then he dodges and escapes through a side tunnel, and he hears his friends calling for help and he rushes to them. When Rotor arrives, Sonic asks him to pull out the power ring from his backpack. Rotor grabs a board and creates a bridge to reach Sonic, but a green tentacle grabs him. Grabs his leg and then drags him toward the water. Rotor fights back, kicking the tentacle until it releases him. He then reaches Sonic, who grabs the power ring, freeing himself from the water. Sonic rescues Sally, and while Rotor pulls Antoine to safety just in time. As they catch their breath, Sonic thanks Rotor for being a hero, and Sally gives him a kiss. More on this later. On the cheek, and then Antoine salutes him. However, their celebration here is interrupted by an earthquake. Rotor then warns them about Robotnik's snake probe, which are being used to extract the oil. The ground shakes again, and then the Kraken appears, blocking their path. He tells them that they won't escape and that they will die from pollution, just like the rest of his people. When Sonic asks what that means, the Kraken says that he was once a king of the underground world, but the surface dwellers, including Robotnik, began polluting it, leading to the extinction of his race, making him the only survivor.
The Omega.
Yeah. Sally reassures the Kraken that they are not polluters. Robotnik is. But before they can discuss this, another earthquake hits, and the two snake probes emerge from the walls, binding the Kraken. And a third probe soon joins. And then Antoine suggests escaping, but then Sonic insists that they help the Kraken. Rotor reveals that the snake probes are coming from the oil platform on the surface. Sonic then decides to run through a tunnel created by the snake probes to make his way to the surface. So later in the control center of the robot, Robotnik orders his swap bots to activate all the snake probes. But before the order can be carried out, Sonic arrives, presses a button on the SWAT bot's chair, and then sending it out, flying out to the control room. Sonic then activates the snake probe's emergency self-destruct sequence, causing them to retract and self-destruct. With the drilling platform system going haywire, Sonic presses all the buttons on Control Center while singing the song he had practiced earlier on the electric guitar, and the system overloads, and Sonic makes his escape, and the drilling platform collapses. Sonic then returns to the Kraken, Sally, Rotor, and Antoine in the underground lake, where Rotor pours the green water from his canteen into the contaminated water, and the water instantly purified, much to everyone's relief. In gratitude, the Kraken gives Sonic a sack filled with something that will help revive the Great Forest. Sonic then thanks the Kraken and then jokingly suggests that if he ever wants to go fishing, he knows where to find him. And we never see him again. Or at least I don't think we ever see him in Archie.
We don't.
Okay. So back in the Great Forest, Sally pours some of this green water the Kraken gave them onto the seeds, and then causing them to grow rapidly, which delights everybody. And then Sonic then asks Rotor what it feels like to be a hero. Rotor, then exhausted with an ice pack on his head, admits that it's a tough job, and he jokes he'd rather stick to just being a handyman for now. The heroes share a laugh as they watch the newly revived forest flourish. End of episode. So, Malzilla, thoughts?
Oh man, it was a slog to get through this episode for me. I'm not gonna lie. It took some mental fortitude. This one did not click to me, and I felt bad because I like Rotor as a character, but this episode was just not doing it for me. And again, as I kind of mentioned earlier, Sonic has always had an environmental message in the games, in the comics, and the shows, but this one was just a little too done too bluntly. Or what I mean bluntly, it's like, oh, look at us, we're planting trees. Oh no, the trees aren't working. We got to save the trees. It's like, you could have written that a lot better. I will say something kind of interesting though, is for those of our listeners, the coasters, who have been keeping up with IDW, there is actually a lot of parallels between this episode and a recent issue of
What?
IDW before the
Okay.
Phantom Rider, where basically Sonic and Tails are testing out a new extreme gear and, tumble their way into some kind of underground cavern ecosystem with a lot of like green water, bioluminescent plants. Like it's kind of a lot like this episode with a dash of Avatar, not Last Airbender, like the James Cameron films. Looks like a little like Pandora. They find it's a Chaos Emerald causing things to mutate and grow. So there's I'm thinking to myself, just did Evan like pull out some SatAM influence for that? But yeah, this episode just kind of it's a thing. It happened. Again, I like Rotor. I'm just ashamed that he didn't quite get a good episode because if you think about it, by this time, Antoine's had like 2 episodes and Rotor's barely had any. Though Rotor did tag along on Sonic Harmonics, so I shouldn't say that, but that was kind of him. That was a duo of him and Sonic, as opposed to this was a lot of him on his own. So yeah,
Hmm. So, what's your letter grade?
I give it like a C minus.
C minus. Wow. Okay, was it the environmental message that made you say,
I
"Man,
just
I'm out of this"? No, not for me.
it just didn't click with me. I just didn't think it was that great.
Were there any moments you're like, "Ugh, fast forward this"? Because I definitely felt that way with this next episode. But
Oh no, I thought the middle of this episode was the fast forward part. But you and I are gonna have some really interesting conversations about the next
oh
episode.
yes, we will. Because I did not like that thing. I don't know. I relatively enjoyed this episode. I wasn't bored. Um, I I liked how I thought it was paced fine. I thought some of the parts were interesting. I guess the thing I wanted to talk about the most that I was talking about earlier was the whole kissing thing. Because I know, I mean, I'm going to talk about like in terms of like cultures, right? Sometimes when people are greeting you, like they kiss you on the cheek, right? Like I guess
No
like European
European thing.
cultures, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of like other media where somebody rewards you with a kiss on the cheek. Like where have I seen this before? Because I'm gonna bring this up here because this is a conversation I want to have with you. Um, Maybe you're familiar with the Sally meme that came out. I can't really. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't quote it verbatim. But you know which one I'm talking about, right?
No,
No.
give me a little
Okay. All right.
description.
Okay. I was wondering if you'd be able to guess based upon this the hints I'm dropping. No, there's one where it's Reboot Sally where she's programming something into Nicole, I think, or she's like it's like it's a panel from Archie, like Reboot Archie, where she claims like I've been with the fox, a dog, and a hedgehog, and maybe a SWAT
Oh,
bot or two. What?
yeah, okay, I know that one now. Yeah, okay, I've seen that one. Kind of the Sally's long list of romantic partners: hedgehogs, foxes, coyotes, skunks, echidnas, SWAT bots.
Yeah, and then the only thing Nicole has to say in response is "slut," kind of like
But
right. And
yeah,
I'm sort of wondering after watching this episode. This is when I started to like think about this meme again. And I'm like, was this where the writers kind of got this idea that we're like either A, she's the village bicycle, or B, she's like this person who shows affection to every character? Or is it like, oh, it's like winning an award, like you get a kiss from the princess or something,
I
right?
think it's a little bit more into that because again, she is a princess.
Well, yeah,
Like
I'm
if you
sure it came
think,
from a place of innocence. It didn't come from
yeah,
like a place of like degeneracy. So,
oh yeah. Well, I'm just thinking like
but
in
it
typical
certainly could be
fairy
read
tale.
that way. I'm saying that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, what like I'm saying is like a lot of times fairy tales, medieval stories. The princess would bestow her favor on whoever. And a kiss on the cheek is you know again, it's pretty innocent. I mean, I would say the bicycle joke would have come out of more so of the Archie, because they kind of wrote her a little bit more flirty
Okay.
and not just in like an innocent, like there's a couple times where, you know, go back to Mecha Madness. Wow, another Mecha Madness reference. When Knuckles shows up to fight Mecha Sonic before they turn him into Mecha Knuckles, she and him have kind of a flirty dialogue talking about how, when she was a kid, her and her dad would take her up to Angel Island, the floating island, and they'd go camping and they'd hang out with, Knuckles and Knuckles' dad before, Locke decided to be, before he took his next level in deadbeat dadness. But it was kind of a very flirty conversation. I mean, yes, they're childhood friends reminiscing about their past, but the way he kind of looks at her, the way she kind of responds back, and like the writer's notes is learn more about this in coming issues. It's kind of like, okay, this is a little bit more flirty. If you go back to the Sally mini, at the end of the mini, which really we could do a whole episode on the Sally mini and how really it's more than anything a St. John pilot story, where she, as she walks away from her backup freedom fighter team to go back to Knothole, Penders wrote a note of like, oh, while her heart has always belonged to the hedgehog, someone new has captured some feelings too. So it's just kind of explaining that, yeah, everyone wanted a piece.
Okay. I guess it's just the result of her being the lead female at the time. So
Yeah,
before like
I mean,
Amy
again,
took over.
well, yeah, again, Amy, and especially Amy in the Archie continuity at the time, was they had her as someone Tails' age. So Amy's affection for Sonic was very cute. She was just kind of a fangirl, and it was kind of a wholesome cuteness. Apparently they were pen pals. So, and this is, go read Archie 25, which is kind of a, you know, Sonic CD homage before they
I love
fully
that issue
adapted
as a
it.
kid. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, Spaz just freaking rocked that. Rocked that.
The I never really got the joke at the end until I became an adult. It's funny. A lot of those Archie jokes I didn't get until I became an adult. Like I'd have to
Oh yeah, I
constantly
mean,
ask like my dad or something. Like, what does this mean? Like really didn't get all the puns and all that stuff.
well,
But
it's kind of a different time in the franchise. It was so early, and again, all the writers, dudes in their 30s to 40s, you know, Sonic wasn't a thing. Sonic was just a new guy on, this thing. They didn't have the affection for it as a lot of the current writers who did, who grew up with Sonic. So
mm-hmm.
they just kind of, wrote with the new and puns and love triangles and, you know, daytime soap drama.
Right, right. Well, I guess my letter grade would be a C. Um,
Okay.
I didn't really hate it. I didn't love it. I mean, I'd much rather watch, I don't know, the Lazar episode again or Warp Sonic or Sonic's Nightmare than have to watch this one again. I don't really care for the Kraken. Sorry, Kraken stands out there, which I
There
doubt
are
there is
better
any.
Krakens to stand.
Yes,
There are
yes,
better
there
Krakens.
definitely is. Um, the like I said again, like I said, the only thing I got out of this was the whole Sally kissing, Rotor and Sonic. I don't think she kisses Antoine in this one, but that comes later. But um, that's all I really got out of it. Yeah. So without further ado, you want to dive into Sonic Past Cool?
Oh, absolutely.
For me, it's Sonic Past Uncool, but I know maybe it's Sonic Past really cool for you. So let's get into it. All right. So this episode is directed by Dick Sebast. Again, it's written by a duo. It's written by Kate Kutch. I think how you pronounce her name. She's best known for 1988's Dino Riders, a show I've never heard of before.
I
Uh,
remember Dino Riders.
you do? Okay. All right. I guess I was not really too much into the dinosaur phenomenon. I mean, I like dinosaurs, but I wasn't that into it. I guess considering your name is Malzilla, I'm guessing this was your jam, right?
It is actually one of those things where there was a especially in the late '80s through the early '90s, it movies like The Land Before Time, which oddly, this is kind of topical to the subject of this episode.
It's very Land
Um,
Before Time, this episode.
very Land Before Time. Jurassic Park came out in 1993, so there was and obviously the Power Rangers, well, with the dinosaurs. And then all other '80s shows like Dino Saucers, and dinosaurs had kind of taken a really big, push back into the, pop children's pop culture, in the late '80s and the early '90s.
Yeah, Disney's
Right,
dinosaurs. Denver the Last Dinosaur. Yeah.
Denver the Last Dinosaur. That that theme song is a bop. It is a bop.
It's pretty catchy and very memorable. Why don't they just put that in the Sonic 3 trailer instead of Jelly Roll? I'd take that any day. Anyway, just for context for our listeners out there, the previous episode, I forgot to mention that the previous episode, Subsonic, was, according to the Sonic Wiki, that one came out November 27th, 1993, but this one came out December 4th, 1993. So, crazy. It's almost December 4th. We're recording this on November 30th, 2024. Or at least November 30th, my time. Malzilla's time is still the 29th. So
Yeah, I got 3 hours left in the on the 29th. So yeah, we're about to hit early December.
yeah, so exactly what 31 years ago today, or not today, soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so anyway, this was written by. That's weird. I'm checking the wiki. They spell this lady's name differently on here. I'm not sure which one's the correct spelling, or if that's just a typo or a fan thing. They spell it Kate, or with the K, like Kayte, and probably the same pronunciation. Anyway, she also did 1990s New Kids on the Block, the animated series. And what the other writer is a lady named Cheryl Scarborough. She has kind of the same pedigree as Kate Kutch, but the only thing different is she worked on 2002's Kim Possible. IMDb gives us a 6.4. So let's dive in. So our episode begins in Knothole Village with Sonic, Sally, and Rotor working on Bunny's leg ladders, but they malfunction, sending her through the roof. Sonic eventually catches and destabilizes her after a series of chaotic mishaps, while meanwhile, Tails playing, I guess what you'd call this is, the internet calls this dirt hockey? Or just...
Dirt hockey, field hockey.
Okay. Nearby, and then accidentally discovers a baby pteropod, whom he names Baby T.
Baby T! What?
You're making this episode sound better than it really is, in my opinion. The two bond over a game of hockey, and then Tails sneaks Baby T into Knothole. Before he does that, though, Tails laments that he's hungry, and this is a very E.T. moment where they decide to return to return to Knothole through this elevator pulley system. I want to interject that I'm very neutral on a lot of the things in this episode. The one thing I do like is I love this pulley system. I think it's the first time we see it in the show, where they go.
I think so. You're right, and if you think about it, because they always have to take the slide into Knothole, because you figure Knothole's in kind of like a valley or gorge or kind of crack. It's kind of in a little sunken area. So if you think it's okay, if they take the slide to get down, well, how do they get back up? Mm-hmm. So having a little elevator pulley to take them up actually kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah. Uh, I do find this contraption interesting. I mean, I don't. I guess this is like a TV show thing, or I don't know if you call this a retcon, but like the thing about it is like the thing that's interesting to me is like how they progressively move through each season, and then the way they introduce new characters and new concepts, like it's always been there, you know. Or like I
Hmm.
think it's in season 2 where they have all these red shirts. I guess I want to call them like red shirts for those people who don't know. It's like usually in Star Trek, whenever there was a character wearing a red shirt, you always knew that that was a character that was going to die, or a disposable character you weren't going to see for like 10 or 5 minutes in the show because they need to build tension somehow. Uh, we later see some like sort of muscle that Sally has in Knothole, which I always thought was like hilarious and interesting. But um, yeah. Anyway, that out of the way. Let's continue. Yeah. So the whoa, where did I? Whoa, sorry. The computer just made a weird flash in the screen. Anyway, Tails then struggles to keep Baby T fed as he overeats all the food in this knothole hut kitchen. Tails is upset that he eats all the food, which prompts Baby T to abandon Tails' company. Then worried, Tails admits to Sonic and company that while they're collecting apples using Bunny's ladder legs, he tells them what happened. Tails only refers to this as a problem, and they follow him. Sally, elated, recognizes Baby T as a pteropod and insists that he must return to his migrating herd. Tails resists, not wanting to part with his new friend, but their conversation is interrupted by tremors signaling the herd's arrival. Um, to interrupt here, I love how Sally knows everything about like the world she lives in. I don't know. I mean, I know some men they don't like. I mean, this is gonna sound weird, but I know how like some men they don't like it when like women are smarter than them. Oh, for me, that's a major turn on. Like that's like, oh wow, she knows her shit, that sort of thing. I mean, like this is probably what made me interested in the show because I mean, not to like sound like I'm pro feminist here, and this is a pro feminist podcast. I'm not trying to say this, mind you. I'm just trying to say it's nice to see a show that actually takes female characters seriously and like tries to portray them in a light that's not like they're a trophy, always something to be won, or they're the female version of the main character, you know. So
I will say this though, Sally being kind of the well of information was pretty fun. She's like, oh my god, it's like she's like, let me recite this fifth grade book report that I did on these creatures to you. Um, you know, it's kind of endearing, it's kind of cute, but there's also at the same time, these it's like kind of like, oh, Sally just like knows everything. It's also kind of on the flip side. It's one of the reasons a lot of fans didn't like her. They thought she was very Mary Sue-ish because it seemed like, oh, here's something new that, we don't know about. Let's ask Sally because apparently she knows everything. Now, mind you, Nicole knows everything because Nicole's a computer and Sally uses her, but no, Sally was just like, she was almost giddy when she saw it. It's like, oh my god, I've researched these. It's like, you're 15. When did Robotnik's been conquered the world 10 years ago. You've been fighting this rebel fight. When did you study dinosaurs?
hey,
When
she's
did
a
you
girl who
have
does her
time to...
homework. Okay, I need to ask you then.
Mhm.
What is a Mary Sue? Tell me what that
Okay, so
is.
let me
Do I need to Google
the
this?
or the origin of a Mary Sue. Um, let's go to Wikipedia because that's probably the best way. A
Okay.
Mary Sue is a type of fictional character, usually a young woman, who is portrayed as unrealistically free of weakness or character flaws. The term Mary Sue is often applied pejoratively to strong female heroines considered to be unrealistically capable, both in fan fiction and commercially public fiction.
Okay, so
Now, the male version of
unrealistically.
that is Gary
Okay,
Sue. So, like, for example, like Jeffrey St. John was very much a Gary Stu.
Okay, so
They're
okay,
often
go on.
they're often like seen as like authors self inserts into the story.
So, our writers today, that was their self-insert as being a woman. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm not saying that this is your argument. I'm just saying that's what you're trying to say, mind you.
Um, it's just kind of whenever you have a character, that is kind of just portrayed without flaws, like they know everything. Now Sally's got a lot of flaws, so I would never call her, I wouldn't call her Mary Sue, but like whenever and you see this a lot in comics because like a lot of times when new writers come in, you change up the cast, you bring in new characters, and sometimes some of these new characters are more, it feels like they're more capable. Like going back to Jeffrey, Jeffrey was this, secret agent who just came out to nowhere. He was older. He looked down on everyone. Said, "Oh no, don't send a kid to do a man's job." Blah blah blah. I can do no wrong. I know everything. When in reality, it's like, no, you don't.
So people didn't like this about Sally because she was too much of a know-it-all. Can I say that?
Well, it's just too much of a know-how, too all like again, especially kind of when you got into the mid 2000s, early 2000s, where the game cast finally kind of became characters that we had interacted with in the adventure games, and people coming into the comics and saying, well, why isn't Amy the main female character who's this chipmunk who seems to be bossing everyone around?
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know about you guys, but I always enjoyed that. I don't know. We need to have more people, like more women in like, leadership positions because, I feel like we don't see enough of it. Or maybe we do. I don't know. Is this a comics thing? And I'm just living under a rock?
unfortunately, it's a real world thing.
What do you mean? It's a real world thing.
Look at two of the last three U.S. elections.
Okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Let's get out of politics
I
right
hate to
now.
bring real world
Right
politics,
now, right
but
now. We are jettisoning out of this podcast. Goodbye. All right, that was the show. No, I'm
I
kidding.
killed it. I killed it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's this will go down in the history books. It's fine. It's fine. Um, again, this is not a feminist podcast. I'm not saying we're against femininity. We want to remain absolutely neutral. But I literally do like how Sally was portrayed as a character back in the day. Because I feel like, based on the media we got, we didn't get much of this.
Oh, especially at the time, absolutely.
I guess one thing I would want to say is that, I feel like there's not enough media that sort of shows people, especially female characters, kind of in a hopeful situation. So I feel like we need more things like this. I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to say that like, oh, we need more representation. I mean, it would be nice to have representation, of like, minorities and other things, right? And I'm not going to try to go down the route of, the cringe, like, oh man, you're doing the DEI, you're doing the woke stuff, Radley. I don't want to go down that route either. But I'm just also trying to say that it's nice to, like, again, kind of reiterating what I was saying in a previous episode, that media does really portray how we view the world. So I really feel like a situation like this is very helpful to see, based upon like what it is we have and how it can, make our lives better, like bring people in. I'm not trying to say like we need to be, we all need to hold hands and say we are the world. But at the same time, it's when you're inviting people to the table, you're having the world leaders, you're having people, who's sitting at the family dinner table. You got to let other people, give some, make everything a little fair here. So I know I'm going on a tangent. Let's continue with this episode. So the group follows the Tremors to the Great Forest, where Baby T reunites with his mother. Tails then tries to follow follow, but then trips in front of a stampeding herd. Sonic saves him just in time, explaining that Baby T belongs with his family. This prompts Tails to reflect on his own longing for his mother, leading him to let Baby T go. The end. Well, that was a great episode. All right, good night, everybody. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
There's more. Actually, I do want to say something interesting. Is I think this is like the first time outside of referencing Uncle Chuck or Sally's dad, King Acorn, that any of the main characters would mention a biological parent. Well, actually, no. I take it maybe they mentioned Antoine's dad in the show, but again, these are characters that were never really officially like given any kind of background. Especially for Tails, because obviously he's a game character. So we know Sega, they're not going to give any game characters unless you're a Robotnik, any kind of family. But it was kind of interesting to actually, hear Tails, reference his mother, because really, even in the Archie comics, he doesn't, he was so young, like. He was born basically on the eve of the of Robotnik's coup d'etat, and the fact that he remembers his mom at all is kind of surprising. Because really, he was pretty much raised by Sally, Sonic, and Bunny, and Rosie to an extent.
Right. Well, they give him more of a family in the Archie series, which I'm guessing they throw away later, or at least. Sega does.
They Amadeus and Rosemary were Pender's creation, so they got wiped. They got flushed.
All right. However, Sally notices that the pteropods are migrating the wrong direction and sends Sonic to redirect them. Sonic guides the herd into a closed pass where Sally attaches a communication device to Mama T, hoping to decode their language. What?
Yeah, she says, "Oh, I made these decoders." It's like, okay.
Wait, thought that was silly?
Sally. Yeah, I did. I thought it was just kind of like, it's like, hey, I made these decoders for these when I was like 8.
She's a tech kid. You got to look up to them.
Yeah, she is.
As Nicole works on translating, the group notices that the pteropods seem scared, and Sonic wonders what could be frightening them. Back in Robotropolis, Robotnik reveals that his plan is to roboticize the pteropods. What he says is the last roboticized species on Mobius. Or, excuse me, unroboticized species on Mobius. Snively corrects him, saying that this excludes the Freedom Fighters. Angry, Robotnik orders a pursuit, sending his hovercraft and stealth bots after them. So, the Freedom Fighters then follow the pteropods to an uncharted great jungle to avoid Robotnik's forces. Mama T leads them to a path with glowing, I guess what they call glowing scorch plants, which disintegrate anything they touch. I think another piece of lore from the SatAM show that we never see again. Am I right?
I think so.
Or am I
Unless
right?
It pops up in season 2, but we'll get more into that as the episode progresses.
I don't think we see this again. I don't remember this.
Probably not.
Because on rewatch, because mind you, when I watched this episode, I watched it in 2021 for the first time. I never saw this episode before, and I can see why. As Rotor examines one, Sonic is caught by a creeper vine and then dragged towards quicksand. The team tries to save him by pushing a tree trunk into the quicksand, but it's not enough. Tails calls Baby T, who brings Mama T to knock the tree into place. And Sonic escapes just in time and thanks Mama T for her help with a grateful kiss. Now, 1, so Sonic's doing the kissing now. 2, quicksand. This is so 1990s.
I know it is.
I like how they switched to Sonic doing the kissing now. Why didn't they make this a thing? I don't know. Maybe that was just too weird. Robotnik, then now in a hovercraft, goes to their location and traps them all into a force field. Mama T tries to break through, but fails and is captured in a cage created by Robotnik, leaving Baby T helpless. Determined to save Mama T, Sonic leaps onto the rising cage, but sabotages its controls and brings it down with Bunny's help. However, Robotnik, confident that they cannot escape his force field, taunts the Freedom Fighters using. Oh, yeah, excuse me. I'm reading this wrong. Taunts the Freedom Fighters. Sonic then uses a power ring to break through the barrier with a super spin and creating a 10-second opening, enough so the Pteropods and the Freedom Fighters can escape, leaving Robotnik furious over their very, very narrow victory. The heroes then reach a river where Sally, using the coal, translates Mama T's speech and learns that they can use a large patch of the scorch plants beyond the river to stop Robotnik's hovercraft plans. So Sonic taunts them, leading them into the plants, which malfunctions them. Robotnik narrowly avoids these plants with his hovercraft, but then loses track of Sonic and friends. Later, while walking through the jungle, Sally reveals that she collected scorch plant seeds to plant back in Knothole, surprising Sonic. The group arrives at Boulder Bay. I'm guessing this is where they're headed. Where do they head in the land before time? The Great Valley?
Great Valley.
That's what it was.
Great Valley.
Yeah, they couldn't call it that. They needed to make
Well, it's not a valley. It's more, it's premier beach property. These pteropods, they got good real estate sense.
Okay. A quote-unquote safe haven for pteropods. Tails bids an emotional farewell to Baby T, who insists on staying with his mother. Baby T mimic the only part. Okay, this is the only thing that made the episode for me. Baby T then mimics Sonic's speech, amusing everyone as they part.
It's funny because it's like, this is hilarious because when Sally brings the seeds, because this is all big one scene, she kind of, if it's like Sonic says that's really cool, and she's like, oh really, it's cool, like she's excited because Sonic's praising her, and he's like, oh, it's way past, is it way past cool now? It's past cool, and she kind of then goes like, she's super excited because Sonic likes her idea. But then when Sonic kind of does his Sonic thing, she kind of goes back into normal Sally mode.
Mm-hmm.
And then when, Baby T, talking through the translator of the Sonic lingo, everyone laughs. But, like, Sally's like, seriously, I made these. And this is what I get for it. Another one. It made me laugh. I thought it was great.
That was the only part that I
frustrated.
actually laughed out loud. That was the only one part that I enjoyed in this entire episode. So... I mean, maybe the whole Sally being smart thing, but everybody, I guess this is what you were saying. Everybody writes out as a Mary Sue thing. I guess you could make the same argument about Amy, but she's...
Yeah. Oh, I'm just saying it's kind of like when you try to look from different perspectives, like what some people might think as positive traits, someone else might see differently.
Okay, that's fair. I guess to each their own. I guess that's all I can really say about that. Yeah, so Malzilla, let's hear your thoughts on this. I know you really like this episode, and I've been, shitting on it so far.
It was an episode that, like, I wasn't super interested in getting into it.
Okay.
But I found myself as I was watching, I'm like, you know what, this isn't bad. In fact, the only knock I can actually throw on this episode is that there's a scene where, like, they first start riding the pteropods. Bunny is nowhere to be found. Like, Bunny, I think, does more in this episode than she does most of the season. Where, she disappears, and then, like, 2 minutes later, it was like she just reappears. Like, you don't see her board a pteropod. She just kind of shows up randomly. That's the only, like, error I could really, give with the episode. But it was funny. I was surprised how much I liked it. Like, I'm watching this, I'm like, I'm vibing with this. I think I started thinking about why did I like it. And I think the reason I liked it as much as I did is I think it's really well paced. They don't linger on things too much. Like, you could see this whole, like, you could have done this whole episode of just basically Tails trying to hide Baby T from the rest of the Freedom Fighters. You could have done the whole episode like that. It would have been grating. But they's like, okay, we're gonna play, we're gonna get some food, okay, I gotta tell the others. We tell the others, like, okay, let's go. We gotta take him back to his mom. It's like, okay, well, now we gotta go do this. So it's like, I felt like it was really well paced. Um, I'm a sucker for, these dinosaur analogs, and Baby T and Mama T. They pulled their weight. You know, they did stuff. They weren't just kind of. A lot of times you get these episodes where you have these, one and done characters, and they're just kind of window dressing. They felt like they actually were productive. So yeah, I found that I really liked this episode a lot more than I initially thought I was going to.
Okay. Yeah, as you could tell probably from my analysis, I was very bored during this episode. I mean, like, to me, I could see not Archie fans, Sonic fans' argument. We're like, oh, SatAM, I don't like this show. There's nothing that references Sonic. This is a clear example of infidelity. This is infidelity. I'm on the cuck chair. While watching this. That's how I felt. To use a really strong analogy, so you get an idea.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, no, I mean no. I watched this entire video once about Super Mario Brothers and by a YouTuber named Patrick Willems, where he talks about how adaptations and what makes a good adaptation, and he just said, using the word like infidelity all the time, and it just stuck with me. But I have a very strong.
Hold that on.
What?
Hold that, because I want to hear when we do our review of Sonic 3. I want to hear about what you think of the infidelity of the movie to the Sonic Adventure 2.
Okay, yeah, we can get into it when that comes out. Yeah. Because I don't know. That's sort of how I felt watching this episode. I'm going to talk more about infidelity and being on the cuck chair. Not me in particular. I'm talking about other Sonic fans. Well, watching SatAM, I get it. It sucks to be in that chair, and that's how I sort of felt with this episode. So my review, the only redeeming quality was that ending, was the joke at the end. So I guess I'll give it a D.
Yeah, I'm giving it a solid B+ on my end.
Okay.
Like I said, this one legitimately surprised me. I enjoyed it infinitely more than I ever thought I could.
Huh. All right. Well, yeah, that's season 1, everybody.
Season, we made it through.
We did. I guess just to reiterate, if you're ready here and you're this far into the episode, I will give you my top, 1 to 13 episodes. My recommendation, how you watch them. My number 1 episode for this season is the first episode, not the first episode. I think it's like the second or third. I think it's the third in terms of like production release.
Okay.
Number 1, Sonic and Sally, the episode where I know probably some of these titles, probably people listening, they're like, what was that one again? Like, even myself, I had to like look at some of these titles. I'm like, what was that one again? Right? It's like, I don't know if you watch like early Simpsons episodes where they have like titles of the episode and you're just sitting there scratching your head like, what? Have I seen this? And then you read the synopsis, like, oh yeah, I've seen this. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Malzilla, but that's definitely with this show. Very much. Yeah, so my first number 1 is Sonic and Sally. The one where Sally's a robot, or she has like a robot twin. That's number 1, peak SatAM, season 1. Number 2 being Sonic Racer, the one where he's being raced against, the one that's like the race with the cheetah bot. Number 3, Ultrasonic, the one with Uncle Chuck, or I guess that's the only Uncle Chuck episode, where they try to bring back Uncle Chuck in his roboticized form. 4, Hooked on Sonics with Antoine, the Antoine episode, where this fool who's trying to better himself. Number 5, Supersonic, which is the Lazar episode where Sonic loses his speed for 10 minutes. Not even the whole episode, even though I did like the episode. Mind you, you know what? It's really funny. All of these, all except for Ultrasonic, All of these are ones that I saw in VHS back in the day. So that's why they're kind of burned into my memory. I don't know if this is just nostalgia bias, but I still very much love these episodes. The next one on the list, let's see, number 6, Sonic Boom. That's the one where, how do you describe that? The one where they go to the Great Swamp,
The
and
first true episode.
yeah, the one with Cat, or the episode with Cat where
Yeah.
he gets roboticized, or
Yep.
quote unquote roboticized. It happens off screen. We're led to believe. Then 7, Sonic's Nightmare. I liked it, but it's a hot mess. 8, Warp Sonic. Also a great episode, but it's aight. It's fine. 9, Sonic and the Secret Scrolls. I don't know why they go to this area. It's fine. It's not one of those. 10, Subsonic. It's passable. 11, Sonic and Tails, the pilot. I can't stand how Sally's depicted on this episode because she's Pink Sally. 12, Sonic Harmonic. The one where Rotor and Sonic go to outer space to dismantle the not Death Egg, the not Death Star. And 13, finally, is Sonic Pass Cool, this episode, or one I just talked about, the dinosaur one. So those are my what is it? My list for this season. Malzilla, you have the floor. Tell us your thoughts on SatAM season 1.
I'm going to make a really interesting comparison, and I know
Yes.
Radrey, this is probably going to upset you,
No,
but
no, that's why we're here. That's why we're here.
that's why we're here. I enjoyed the season. It in many ways it reminds me of IDW Sonic in that there's not a whole lot of highs, but there's not a whole lot of lows. It's very kind of dialed down the center. It's very, I don't want to say mid in the bad context, but there's very, everything is very solid. I don't see a lot of highs. There weren't a whole lot of banger episodes, but they weren't a whole lot of bad episodes either. So they're just kind of in that, you know, like C plus to B minus range for me. So it was very episodic. I like a more serialized narrative, so tip my hand. I'm usually a little bit more fond of season 2, but once we get to that, I'll kind of go a little bit more. I don't have a specific ranking of my favorite episodes, but I do have I have 4 awards. The first award is the most overrated episode. It's not say it's a bad episode, but I think it's a bit overrated, and that is Sonic Racer. It's fine, again, but I don't see why people love it. My underrated episode, and again, this kind of took me by surprise, was ultimately Sonic Pass Cool. Like I said, this, and this is, people might say this is a recency bias because I just watched it the most recently, but I really did enjoy the episode. I thought it was very solid. The worst episode or episodes that I'm kind of a toss up, and that to me is Hooked on Sonics and Subsonic, which is kind of a bum to see because those are an Antoine or Rotor episodes, and I like the characters, but I don't think those episodes really did right by them. But that's just me. I think if at the end of the day, I probably would say Hooked On was maybe a little bit better than Sub. But
Yeah, I'd say
but for
that's
best,
fair. I could agree with that analysis.
but I would say the best episode is Sonic and Sally. I think that is the solid. It's
Okay, so we're in
fun.
agreement there at least.
Yeah, we're in agreements there. I mean, I could nitpick some of the character writing choices, but it's such a fun episode. Robot Sally is hilarious. You have all the funny things where like they high five and Sonic goes flying. It's like that wasn't the funny kiss joke, but yeah. Again, season 1 is fine. I think
I
If I
mean,
threw out some other,
let me interject here. Yeah, come on. You even have Sally with the word funny kiss. It's something that's lived out for 30 plus years. So
oh
obviously,
yeah,
Sally's known for kissing. That's for one thing.
I'd also probably say Ultrasonic was another one that I really liked. I liked Uncle Chuck. Um, but stuff like Lazar, the city of Maga, it's just like this stuff's pretty forgettable. Like I mean, it's not bad,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's
the
not
city of
like,
Maga definitely very forgettable. Well, I
and
mean, they didn't really. I mean, not even Ian really used that again, or maybe he couldn't. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I don't know. I like the pilot was fine. Again, a lot of the things were just fine. I didn't really feel good or bad against them. Again, it's just all kind of very like, okay, this is all very steady.
Hmm.
Again, that's why I kind of feel it. I've compared it a lot to IDW Sonic, where ID Sonic feels very steady. There's not a lot of super highs and super lows, but they're kind of like, okay, you have either a not bad but solid, the kind of the it runs for either high end or low end of, solid. Sometimes it goes into the really good, and sometimes it kind of goes into the meh, but for the most part it kind of stays in that center wavelength.
Yeah.
um Two things I will say. I do know, I'd say Tails wasn't used enough, but
No,
that
I can
does
agree with
get
that.
correct. That
Tails
I
is
think
very underutilized this season.
Tails is underutilized, and I think that will be corrected a lot more in season two. So that's kind of a positive there. I'll say Bunny was greatly underused.
Yeah.
I like, she kind of hung out in a couple episodes, but she was very much like she didn't get like an episode like Rotor or Antoine did. And I think like the closest that she got some was like in, when they did Lazar, when like she got brainwashed by, Robotnik. So yeah, it's again, solid season, you know, pretty darn good for episodic storytelling, but at the end of the day, I think the issues that I had pretty much got corrected in season 2. Though
What are
that
those
being said,
issues?
I do well, I just again, just kind of my storytelling. I prefer a more serialized narrative
Oh
than
yeah. Well, that didn't
episodic.
come till later, but yeah.
Yeah. But I'll also say that, we're going to see a lot of interesting changes in season 2. We're going to see some character design changes. Uh we're going to see some voice actor changes. And
Oh, Rotor. Yeah.
yeah, Rotor got replaced. He also got a redesign. His redesign did not. His
No.
face looked, yeah.
No, I don't like. I don't. I don't. I know very few people who like this new Rotor design. And if people want to
Yeah.
know what we're talking about, just Google Rotor season 1, season 2, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah,
He
it's
looks
just
too
yeah,
like he
season.
looks like a little kid.
I mean, I don't mind the red hat from the yellow hat,
Yeah.
but again, his face, it's the kind of like, walruses have those big cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's in like he had one in both his like, you know, freaking in his season 1 and, you know, even the pilot, he had the big walrus cheeks, but then they super reduced them for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I kind of like him not having shoes because he is a walrus, but they gave him shoes too.
Mm-hmm.
But also on the flip side, Sally gets her vest,
Yeah.
which is iconic. And
Because
it's
we
it's one
can't
of those
have
things
we
like
can't have a woman scaring off people with her nudity. You know.
I know, right? But it's also really funny if you look at the designs. Season 1 Sally's eyes are just pure blue. She doesn't have any irises.
Yeah.
But then, come season 2, they give her, actual irises.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do. Uh, Let me ask you this: has your opinion changed at all since watching the season again? Was there any moments like, I gotta watch SatAM again?
Oh no, I mean I enjoyed it. I got a kick out of it.
I mean, there is for me, there is one thing where it's like this is such an old show. I mean, it's not like I dislike old shows, but there are certain times and it's like I would like something new. You know what I mean? To where it's sort of like, I mean, it's the old episode and it's refreshing to watch it again with a new pair of, I mean, like with uh seeing it in a different light, seeing it like years later and seeing how much it's aged. And I do sort of worry that, like, given that it's a 30-year-old show, that a lot of things are going to be dated, a lot of things aren't going to work anymore, the animation is going to be old. But I guess to me, like, some parts of it are kind of like Tom and Jerry. People still watch Tom and Jerry, even though it's like like what? How old is that cartoon? 50 years,
Oh
60
yeah.
years, or something. Some episodes, I mean, particularly Sonic and Sally, are it's a very evergreen type episode in my opinion. So, but again, a lot of it was underutilized. But I want to get into that next time. Well, a
Well, I'll
series
say
wrap up. Let me put it that way.
yeah. Well, let me say this about season one. I think it is interesting, if you've followed Sonic as the franchise has evolved and kind of seeing what they're doing, and if you're open to kind of looking at it what they're doing now, and if you can, watch an old piece of the media and not just kind of poo-poo it because it's not in the kind of, the current parameters of the franchise, but if you can realize, like, okay, much in its infancy, and if you can, like, hold it to its own merits, it's a very solid show. I mean, it was a really good Saturday morning cartoon. You had fun characters that have resonated with the fans to this day.
Yeah, no, I'm fully in agreement. So, I mean, I don't know. I was talking to a friend of mine back in Colorado, where I'm from, and he was telling me that their kids were actually watching this show. So, I mean, somebody's still
Oh,
watching it.
it's funny, like I said, all these shows, they're on YouTube, they're on Paramount Plus, they are accessible, and which is a lot easier than we can say about when we were growing up, when some of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
when we
yeah, let
were
me tell
growing
you,
up.
these VHSs were hard to find back in the day, even at, like, video stores.
Well, yeah,
Like, I knew if you had them.
that's why if you had it on VHS, it was gold. And this is the reason why I remembered these episodes in particular, are the ones that make it very up to the top. I don't know, because I do sort of worry that, like, I'm just using this based upon my nostalgia, but Ultrasonic was not on VHS, and I have very, very few memories of that episode, even if I saw it at all. Because I was saying earlier that 2021 was when I saw all of SatAM finally in its entirety. I mean, like, when we're gonna get into season 2 here, there was a lot of episodes I didn't see, including, like, the final episode. So I didn't even know how it ended. Because it was one of these things. It's like, old men yell at clouds. It's like one of these things where it's like, if you didn't catch it on television, you missed it. You just didn't see it. That, or like maybe
Unless
you
you
had
wanted
a
to go,
what?
I was gonna say, unless you dived into the YouTube.
Well, yeah. Well, YouTube didn't come out until 2005. I mean, this is like the 90s when, like, you either go home and you watch or you don't, or you had a friend next door that taped it, and there wasn't many people that, like, would go out of their way to tape Sonic the Hedgehog, SatAM, before it was called SatAM. There was nobody that would do that for you because, number one, it was on early in the morning, and nobody wants to wake up that early to record a cartoon show, like on a VHS, right? So it's
Oh,
sort
I
of,
did that with Power Rangers.
well, I'm sure, like, maybe Power Rangers was a lot more popular than Sonic SatAM, that's for sure. I mean, you could probably ask somebody to, like, record Power Rangers on the tape and then give it to you at school or something the next day. But this show, And it's sort of like he was on really early. I mean, where you were was it California? It was on like what 6 in the morning?
Well, see, that was the thing is it aired this. It was in the same time block as Power Rangers.
Yeah.
It was 8 a.m.
Oh, it's 8 a.m.
So
for you. Well, I remember Power Rangers was on later because this show, at least when it was on television in my area, it was always 7. And like you're like, I gotta wake up at 6, man. I don't want to do that. And like me, I'm a night owl. There's no way in hell I'm waking up that early unless it's like school or something where like I'm inconvenienced to where I have to get up at that time. You know?
well, again, and this is me watching it back in the 93, 94, and it's Saturday morning cartoons. This is yeah, primo. There were days where I remember getting up at like 6 a.m. and having to like just like waking up, and it's like even before the shows were on, you had to do all like those paid go through those paid infomercial shows, and then it's like you would get into like some of the other like Eek the Cat and Bobby's World. It's like, okay, let's hurry it up through this so we can get to the good stuff. It's like finally, okay, here's X-Men, here's Batman, here's Spider-Man. Okay, Power Rangers. Oh, it's on commercial. Let me switch over to ABC and catch a little Sonic. And
Well, I mean,
it's
that's the
one of those.
thing. There was nothing on during the Sonic time slot because everybody was still sleeping, or at least in my neck of the woods where I was. So it was like 9 a.m. was prime time. That's when all the kids were up, and that's when kids saw it. You know, uh, anything before that, maybe they're like waking up and they're barely awake, barely sleeping, or they're just, turning on. The parents are turning on their coffee makers or whatever at that time. So yeah, I don't know. Uh, boy, the '90s, man. I don't know. It's like listening to like older people and them telling you about their life, about what their life was like when they grew up. Like this is what our life's gonna become when we get older. People are gonna
Oh yeah,
largely
and
ignore us because, like, man, I don't give a shit about this. I care about my TikTok, my Instagrams, or whatever device or thing we're using in 20 years. Who knows?
I will say this: it is kind of funny, kind of being very nostalgic for the early '90s and kind of watching media from that time. Just it's interesting how much brighter things were.
I mean, brighter in terms of like, because I mean, this show's rather dark for its time, but
Yeah, I
like,
mean, there's that. I'm just thinking like, the colors were more vibrant, Like again, so much of that stuff was set like, little, we joked about Denver the Last Dinosaur earlier, and it's like you look at some of those images, it's everything like all the shows set in that time were set in Southern California. It's all various some form of LA. And so it was all kind of pastel neon, bright.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like it's the mood I think about when I think about the early '90s. I
Huh.
think that Southern California vibe. I think like Three Ninjas. I think Power Rangers. All
Huh.
that other stuff. L.A. To me, this is going to be an interesting aside, and this is really nothing to do with Sonic. Is I've always felt that a decade, like a city, will take on the personality of a decade, or like a one city will define a decade. Like I think the '70s. Or let's go like this. I think the 60s, I think San Francisco. I think the Bay Area. I think the 70s, I think of New York. I think of the 80s, I think of like Miami. And then when I think of the 90s, I think of Los Angeles. So, again, I'm also from California, so there's probably a little,
So what
bias
about
there.
the early aughts and the 2010s then?
That was kind of interesting because I think I might feel like I could probably go back to New York for that one.
Okay. Does it make you think of Spider-Man? For some reason, it makes me think of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I'm not sure
I think
why.
St. Mary's Spider-Man, I think in 9/11, just kind of,
Oh yeah, 9/11. Yeah, that definitely set it off. That's for sure. It really did change
yeah.
everything. 2010. I don't know. If you held a gun to my head and you said what was important in 2010, I don't know. Computers.
I was
it
finishing
it
up
was life
college.
before COVID. That's for sure. That was. I mean, I don't know. Our listeners below, please tell us what the 2010s were. I mean, obviously these 2020s are the COVID years, so that's certainly what marked this, uh, you know, decade so far, anyway. Yeah, people are starting off
Yeah.
the 2020s like, man, it's gonna be so cool. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be different. And oh boy, yeah, it certainly was different. But I don't know. 2024, Sonic's still going strong. Maybe for good or for bad. I'm not sure, based upon all the things that are going on in the world. I want to thank all the great people who are in our Discord. Who particularly what's their name? Crater. What's the name? For some reason, Discord's not showing me the names. We have a new person in there. Thank you for your comments.
Crater
And
Labs. Crater
Crater Labs. Thank
Labs.
you, Crater Labs, for being in our server. I did really like the comment you about how TV Tropes calls our fandom the unpleasable fan base, because that is very true. Uh,
That's true.
welcome to our unpleasable fan base. I hope you enjoyed our coverage of SatAM. Was there anything we missed or anything you like to talk about? Anything we should talk about
Oh,
involving
absolutely.
SatAM? We'd love to hear from
Um,
you.
let's do some plugs. Definitely do follow us Twitter, Blue Sky, join the Discord, join the conversation. Um, I don't know if we'll catch it next week or I think we're going to aim for next week because we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to shift away from Sonic on the smaller screen to Sonic on the big screen. And we get to review Sonic the first movie. Speaking of going back to 2020.
Yeah, we're gonna do the first movie before we return back to SatAM season 2. That'll probably be sometime next year. Um,
I think,
start
yeah, season
fresh.
2 will probably, start mid-January or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll do the first 2 films analysis. I'm gonna do the coverage a little differently. It may be one of these things because normally with the SatAM show, I wanted to do it beat by beat. So, plot point by plot point, because I always thought that SatAM kind of had an interesting plot. Whereas I think I could probably just cover the synopsis of the Sonic movies, like probably with, 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then we just, trade notes from there. And that
I
could
think,
probably be
with
the
the
podcast.
movies, we can do a little bit more, discussion because, again, unlike SatAM, these movies are more fresh in our minds. Because I guarantee you, most Sonic fans within the next few weeks are probably going to rewatch these. So maybe even rewatch the Knuckles show, to prep for the peak fiction that is about to, brace, you know,
Let me ask you, Valzilla, what are you most looking forward to rewatching for this show? There's got to be
for
something.
for Knuckles or for like the movies.
Just in general, Sonic X, Adventures of, like, what is there anything like? Man, I should really do a review of that. Are there
I
any of
feel
these?
like I, it's I've watched Sonic Boom recently. I kind of binged that because again, it's kind of one of those fun little, they're 15-minute sketch. It's a sketch comedy. So it's not like, oh, this is not like a super serious show. It's like, oh, I can go, listen, watch a couple episodes like, oh, this is a funny one. I want to see, you know, this funny scenario. I'll go watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Um I also say that um I kind of want to wait a bit for Sonic Prime just because I think I'm still have a little lingering frustrations with that show.
I
I
think a
want to
lot of
want to
people
let
do. I think that it might get better in a couple of years. Who knows?
Yeah, it's like, you want to give it some time to breathe. Kind of maybe forget about some things and then and especially with Netflix's way they drop episodes, it may be better in all in one go than those little short options.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel, as much as I dislike it, I do feel that Sonic X probably deserves another, you know, a legitimate kind of just checking out, because just kind of like, I don't know if I'd want to do it episode by episode, but I definitely feel like it's worth kind of, because I know a lot of people, Sonic X means to a lot to people what like SatAM means to us.
Right.
And
Well, at least that's what Twitter tells us. I don't know how many
Twitter.
people there actually are out there. I mean, whereas SatAM, I meet a lot of people still my age who talk about this show. So I don't know. Maybe if I met more people, a generation younger than me, maybe they'd only be talking about Sonic X. I don't know.
I mean, again, it just depends on who you talk to in the fandom. If you limit yourself to older fans, you're probably gonna be older content creators. You're probably gonna see more of focus on Genesis titles, um, and Archie or SatAM, and maybe the occasional Adventures of, or even the OVA. But if you get that next generation, you start talking to people who got into Sonic in the early 2000s, between the adventure games and Sonic X, they're going to sing a different song. And
Well,
so,
that's the funny thing about the OVA. Like, I didn't even know the OVA was an actual movie. I thought it was just like, back in the day, but like before the internet. I thought that was just like a tips and tricks video, like where you could just rent it and it would like tell you how to beat Sonic 2 or 3. So I never watched it because I thought it was that.
well, it's funny because I remember I'd rent that I remember the first time I rented it. I think it was like I was at the video store called Video Palace, and where I grew up in California, and then I'm like, and I think it was probably the either the late 99, or maybe in the early 2000s. And I remember it said Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, and there was Sonic and Knuckles and Tails. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I mean, it was really 220. It was about an hour long, you know, two episodes put together. But it was fine. I don't. I know some people who really do love it to death. I don't, but I
Oh
think there's
yeah.
definitely. I'll say this: the OVA did a much better job introducing Metal Sonic to people than Sonic CD did.
Well, that was because nobody had a Sega CD. That thing was difficult to have and there's very few titles for it. So, I mean, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with that thing. I mean, they kept on like, gang banging the Genesis with all these peripherals, because they
But
tried.
little add-ons, but to their case, they did put it on all the collector's editions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, if like going back and going through some of these again, yeah, they are really good gems. But yes, you are right. It did introduce Metal Sonic a lot better. But um, okay, let me ask you this: when did you find out about the OVA? Because like my introduction to the OVA only came after my coworker at work back in 2021 told me that he loved the OVA. I'm like, the hell is
oh, like
that?
I said, like I said, I bumped into it in a video
It
store in
was
the
just
late
that. That was
'90s,
it.
early.
Okay, so you just bumped
Yeah,
into it
I
at a
just
video
kind of
store.
came. Yeah.
That was the origin. Okay, you didn't hear
Yeah.
anything about it prior.
Nope.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well.
I
All right.
have these
So.
really funny. I have these really funny stories. Like, I remember, again, kind of in the late '90s, I was in Las Vegas, and they had, Sega had kind of was a partner in these kind of arcades called GameWorks, and there were these big arcades, and you can like, get these little, cards for, X. You can either put money on them, or like, oh, I want to, buy 2 hours of games for like $40. Again, it's Vegas. I was like, 9 or 10, couldn't gamble. So my parents were like, hey, you want to go play some video games? I'm like, yeah. And I remember I bumped into Sonic the Fighters,
Wow.
a
That's
little
cool.
arcade thing of Sonic the Fighters. I'm like, oh my god, it's Sonic, awesome. And then I'm going through, the roster. I'm like, oh, there's Amy, there's Espio. Where's Sally?
Right. Right.
And, it was kind of and he's like, I know, I knew Knack, and like Knack the Weasel. I played with him a lot. Though I was like, why are they calling him Fang? But whatever. It was just kind of one of those things before you realize, like, oh, they're different things. But again, it's kind of we all have some fun Sonic stories where we kind of bump into something that was, kind of cool, kind of fun at the time.
Right, right. Well, I guess we should always probably preface with some of the stuff is what's your relationship with this piece of media, because
Yeah.
that story is always interesting because everybody has kind of a different story to tell. Um, all right then. So it sounds like you want to do Sonic Boom next. Am I right?
I didn't say I wanted to do Sonic Boom.
Okay.
Um, I like I said, I probably would say Sonic X is probably, if we want to aim for that, because if by the way I see things us going, we probably won't get to it till like early 2025, like February or
Oh no,
March.
no, no. Yeah, probably not. I'm just curious, like, which one do you want to juxtapose with this show? I mean, Sonic X is definitely like the antithesis to this show. Because I was thinking it was
Yeah,
either this or like Adventures of, but Adventures of still has Urkel doing the voices. You know, Underground still has Urkel.
actually, funny thing is I was watching movie YouTuber Christian Harloff. I've watched him for years. He actually had an interview with Jaleel White because I guess Jaleel White wrote a book about growing up being Urkel, and they talked about Sonic. And it's funny, one of those things where he talked about like Sonic was the side gig that I didn't want at the time, but looking back, it was the greatest thing for me because voice acting was really interesting. Kind of, it was a nice change of pace, and the fans have loved me since. So
Hmm.
he says he'd love to be in the movies, but he also kind of says it's kind of a long shot because it would be someone like high up in the production would have been like a super fan. Usually that's how you get these kind of little cameo roles.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Hmm. All right. Yeah, sure. I'd be fine doing Sonic X. I find that show to be a real slog.
Oh,
I'd be
and
looking
I'm not.
more. I'd be looking more fun forward to Adventures of, but okay.
Well, I'm just thinking it's like, would we want to watch it in Japanese or would we want to watch it in the 4 Kids
I'd
dub?
probably do both. I'd probably watch it first in English and then second in Japanese. Um,
Probably.
I don't know. Everybody always tells me, no, you gotta watch in Japanese. It's much better. I'm like, yeah, sure. It's a different tone. The tone's definitely different, but it's still the same show, man. I'm not getting much
There
out
are
of
there
it.
there's some differences for to be sure, but again, I don't know if I want to do that episode by episode, but I could definitely, we
What I
can
was
look at
thinking
it.
with Sonic X, because yeah, I don't want to do this because the plot of
There's
Sonic X.
only so much Chris Thorndike we can talk about for weeks on end.
Well, the number one, the plot really does not excite me, so I don't really want to go through the plot. I'll just probably do a synopsis, and then we just exchange notes. You know, so based upon what we saw and what our
Maybe do like
criticism
a
is,
season by season.
season by season. That little, huh? Okay. I was thinking we would just do a bunch of episodes and then.
Works too. Works for me.
All
I'm
right. Yeah, so if you enjoy our coverage, yeah, we will continue for that. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the movies, as we said prior. Yeah, so Malzilla, anything you want to say before we go?
Again, thanks for sticking with us. Again, if there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know. We're pretty open to talking about things. Again, come join our Discord. We have fun conversations. Like I said, we've gotten a few new people, have injected a lot of fun life into it.
Yeah, tell a friend to listen. So how we ending this one?
Good question. I don't know.
I'll throw something in. Bye.